I mean, understanding the human psyche is very difficult. I don't think Western psychology understands the human psyche very well. This is why they blame a lot of problems on chemical disorders and hormonal imbalance. So this is a sign that we don't really understand the psyche. We don't understand bipolar disorders. We don't understand the shape of the psyche. Hinduism found different faculties, different chakras in the psyche, but they used this knowledge to lead life, to make the soul extinct into a liberation from life, which is a damnation. It's not exactly understanding the psyche to have a happy life on this planet. Uh, Hinduism is into neutrality and into leaving this world. Um, we want to stay in this world and be happy in this world. That takes a completely different orientation. Freud and Jung were big authorities in psychology, but I don't feel they had a grasp of the psyche. Especially they were white people. They understood the psyche as white people do. They didn't understand the psyche as black people, which means they didn't cover the whole human experience. There's different kinds of psyche in humanity. There's a physical psyche, like a bodybuilder, a manual worker is invested in the physique as a psyche. The body's not just blood and bones. The body has a mind, right? The animal has pleasures. That's a different kind of soul that builds itself around the animal. Somebody who concentrates on power, money, or pleasure all the time basically creates a division within the soul where there's too much attention be brought to the animal and too little attention brought to the emotions, the intellect, or the physique. This is the key to understand the human psyche. I call it the master-slave faculty relations, which is the key to understand the human psyche. If we have an intellectual who's always busy with the intellect, who's always busy with reason, right? The emotions suffer because they don't get enough attention. There's too much attention given to the intellect, too little attention given to the emotion or to the animal pleasure or to the physical health and wealth and development. So we create a divided self. There's different kinds of divided self depending on what is the master, who is the master of the psyche. Is it the intellect? Is it the emotions? Is it the animal? Is it the physique? Or is it the soul itself, which is very rare to find a human where the soul at the center is the master of the psyche. In white humanity especially, we have emotions to be the master faculty. When emotions are the master faculty, where there's a complete obsession, right, a very strong concentration on family, race, language, country, land, this kind of thing, that creates a reason which is a slave to the emotions. Basically, the intellect is there to justify the emotions and to empower the emotions. The animal as well will serve the emotions. The physique will serve the emotions. So we'll have the emotions as the master faculty and the three other faculties as slaves. There are 4 different possible arrogances because there's 4 different faculties. And there's a lot of different subconscious, a lot of different kind of dwarfism in the other faculties, depending on who is the master. This bipolar kind of condition in the human is not uncommon. A lot of people actually enter psychology as a subject to understand their own psyche. They're depressed and they don't know why. So they get into psychology, understanding and getting courses in psychology just to basically solve their own problems. But we don't really have the proper theory to understand depression. Depression is caused by master-slave politics within the psyche. Internal warfare happens within a soul itself. The degree of the divided self, how much is the soul divided determines the level of depression. Sometimes one of these faculties is so berated, it's so small and sick that it creates havoc and creates madness in the soul itself. There's always one faculty in a mad human, right, that creates the problem. The master is too strong and the slave is too weak. That duality creates madness, depression, craziness. There's no limit to what the soul can become because of the kind of duality that happens. When we go see a psychologist in humanity, we go to see somebody who's emotionally concentrated. For a psychologist, if emotions are balanced, if there's sanity in the soul is fine. Our psychologists don't understand the different kinds of arrogances, the different kinds of duality. If a black man from Africa who is physically developed and animally developed, but not emotionally sophisticated, not intellectually sophisticated, which is fine, it's a kind of human, right? Enters a psychologist's office, that psychologist is going to have a big problem with that person. There are different kinds of personalities, and the psychologist has to understand what kind of personality the psychologist is dealing with. Where is the master faculty? If a bodybuilder or a wrestler walks into a psychoanalyst's office, this is a person whose identity is invested in the physique. It's a physical mind type of personality, which is different from somebody, say, who's invested in family, emotionally. So there's different kinds of master faculties, and there's different kinds of slave faculties. And it is the job of the psychologist to understand what kind of human is sitting in the chair. We have a master faculty. When the master faculty is very happy, it gets into elation. There's a lot of happiness that happens when the master faculty gets what it wants. If somebody is emotional and the emotions get very happy, there's a very big high and elation. But it doesn't mean that at the same time the animal is happy. Sometimes the animal is sick because the emotions are too happy. There is such a thing as too much of a faculty, and there's such a thing as too little of a faculty. If the animal is not allowed to have its food, its joy, and its development, it's going to become an unhappy participant in the soul. And that unhappiness can turn into serious depression. So a bipolar disorder is kind of normal almost in humanity, because as long as you have a master-slave relationship in the faculties, you're going to have some level of depression. These are kind of four different transmission level 1, 2, 3, and 4. The soul goes from one floor to another. It needs an intellect because it goes to the bank and it has to work out its checks. It gets emotional to the family or to the lover. It becomes an animal when it deals with money and power and pleasure. And it's physical when it turns in terms of power or physical labor. But the soul keeps going back and forth. So when it gets into the strong faculty, it feels elated. When it gets into the weak faculty, it feels crippled and depressed. So most humans have this problem. So most humans have some type of bipolar disorder. If we have sanity of the soul, right, determined by the conscious and unconscious, or the conscious and the subconscious, right, then a sane soul has to basically own its entire self. A divided self is the key, to suffering. It's the key to becoming sick. If we get into one faculty very intensively and we deny other faculties, it's just a question of time. 10, 20, 30, 40 years before the entire soul is going to break down. We don't understand the mind. We don't understand that the soul is at the center of the mind. Freud didn't discover the soul. Jung did not discover the soul. The ego is not the center of the psyche. The soul is the center of the psyche. The emotions, the intellect, the animal, and the physique are four different branches of the same soul. It is the political warfare between these faculties that make us sick.